We're told Kodak invented digital photography to save the company, but the truth is sharper and colder. The man who built the first digital camera worked inside Kodak's walls, yet his invention became a threat the company was unwilling to fully embrace. This is not a story about technology alone. It's about fear, incentive systems, and a business model built on selling film that refused to die. Over the next 10 chapters, we will follow inventors, boardroom fights, moonshot prototypes, and a final, slow bankruptcy that reads like a modern industrial Greek tragedy. You will meet the engineer who taped images to cassette tape, the executives who measured success in film canisters, and the tipping points where decisions were made that could have rewritten the company's fate. This chapter sets the stage. Kodak's glory was enormous, its inertia even larger. We'll watch how a company that once taught the world to take pictures could become a cautionary tale for any firm that discovers a disruption and decides to protect the past rather than build the future. Listen for the small choices that split into catastrophe. George Eastman turned photography from an elite craft into a mass habit, and Kodak built an empire on Silver Halide chemistry and convenient consumables. For much of the 20th century, Kodak was shorthand for photography. Its red boxes, retail labs, and film processing networks created a steady, recurring revenue machine. The company didn't just sell cameras. It sold film, developer chemistry, lab services, and the promise that every snapshot would be reliably beautiful. That business model mattered more than the device itself. Employees measured success by film volume, not by pixels. This created a corporate culture superb at incremental improvements to film and processing, and visibly weak at imagining a world where film was no longer the star. Kodak's R&D labs were world-class, and the firm poured resources into new emulsions and labs, but the incentives were tied to consumables. To understand Kodak's fall, you must see how one firm's dominance becomes its blind spot. The seeds of later conflict lived here, a genius for manufacturing matched with a deep reluctance to undercut the very product that paid the bills. Inside Kodak's labs, an engineer named Steve Sasson built a device that would shake photography's foundations. In AD 1975, Sasson assembled a prototype that used a charge-coupled device sensor and recorded images onto a portable cassette tape. The camera weighed about 8 pounds and produced grainy black and white pictures, but it proved the idea. Light could be converted into digital data. When Sasson demonstrated the prototype, it felt like science fiction in a beige lab. His colleagues applauded the engineering feat, but the applause was cautious. Senior managers understood the implication immediately. If digital imaging took off, film sales could collapse. Kodak filed patents and kept the technology close, but they treated the prototype more as a technical novelty than an existential pivot. This chapter is about that moment when invention becomes inconvenient. The man who proved the future lived inside the house that made the past profitable. His story is heroic and heartbreaking because invention alone does not guarantee adoption. The rest depends on strategy and courage. Kodak did not ignore digital entirely. In the late AD 1980s and early AD 1990s, the company released innovations like photo CD and professional digital camera systems that showed the path forward. These products proved Kodak's engineers could build digital offerings that worked. But the rollout was fragmented, and the company treated digital as an adjunct to film rather than a replacement. Marketing emphasized hybrid solutions, and investments prioritized protecting film revenue. Photo CD was elegant for its time, but adoption was limited by consumer behavior and the absence of an integrated digital ecosystem. Meanwhile, rivals like Canon and Nikon partnered with electronics firms and software companies to create complete digital camera experiences. Kodak's distribution strength, its retail labs and grocer relationships, was less relevant in a world where consumers would capture and share images instantly online. This chapter shows how early successes can mask strategic misalignment. Kodak had the pieces, but not the willingness to rearrange them into a new model. The clock was ticking, and the company was answering in whispers, not decisive shouts. Here is the paradox at Kodak's core. The company could build digital cameras, but doing so threatened the revenue that paid for those very engineers. Management conversations revolved around margin math and the long tail of film sales. Executive teams feared that promoting digital would shrink profits from consumables faster than new device sales could replace them. So Kodak slowed, segmented, and hedged. It licensed technology, built some digital devices, and built an ecosystem around printing because printing extended the life of film-style consumables in a digital era. The problem was not incompetence, it was rational behavior inside a flawed constraint. Leaders optimized for quarterly results and protecting distribution channels. Those choices insulated existing cash flows, but starved transformation. Employees who pushed for bold digital strategies found themselves hamstrung by internal metrics and boards that measured success the old way. The cannibalization debate is the most human part of the story. It exposes how incentives, culture, and risk aversion can doom a company even when it owns the technology to survive. By the AD 2000 knots, Kodak began to shift in earnest, but the world had already accelerated away. The company doubled down on printers, printing services, and licensing its intellectual property. Kodak launched the EasyShare camera line and invested in ink and paper solutions designed to keep consumers buying physical prints. But rivals perfected inexpensive compact digital cameras, and then smartphones, led by the device introduced in AD 2007, changed the rules again. Consumers began taking more pictures than ever, and most of them stayed on phones and online, not in physical albums. Kodak's late pivot bought time but not dominance. The company also monetized patents, licensing technology to other firms, which generated cash but did not replace a missing consumer ecosystem. In essence, Kodak was now selling pieces of its future to fund operations in the present. This chapter traces the painful arithmetic of a pivot made under duress, where strategy meets the harshness of market acceleration and changing consumer habits. The final act unfolded slowly and then suddenly. Kodak's revenues eroded as digital cameras commoditized and smartphones centralized image capture and sharing. Cash reserves dwindled and debt pressures mounted, and by AD 2012, the company sought protection under Chapter 11 of the U.S. Bankruptcy Code. The filing was not just a financial event, it was the symbolic end of an era. During the bankruptcy process, Kodak sold large parts of its patent portfolio to raise hundreds of millions of dollars and to satisfy creditors. The company closed plants, restructured operations, and shrank from the consumer stage it had dominated for a century. Leadership changed, assets were parceled, and the Kodak name moved from ubiquitous household verb to a specialized industrial and brand licensing business. That transition saved some value for creditors and employees, but it also marked the end of Kodak's mass market dominance. The story of the fall is technical and legal, but its emotional core is about pride, attachment, and the difficulty of letting go of a business identity that once defined modern life. The Kodak story does not end at bankruptcy. It re-emerged focused on commercial printing, packaging, and licensing, smaller, leaner, and very different from the retail giant of old. But the broader legacy matters more than the corporate rebirth. First, invention is not strategy. Kodak invented digital capture, yet strategy determines whether invention becomes opportunity or liability. Second, business models can trap innovation. A firm that makes money selling consumables will often resist technologies that threaten that stream. Third, timing and ecosystems matter. Kodak had many of the right technologies, but lacked the software, distribution shifts, and consumer behavior to win the digital moment. Finally, Kodak is a lesson about leadership and incentives. What boards praise and compensate influences what managers pursue. For founders and executives today, the takeaway is simple and brutal. Protect your ability to disrupt yourself and align incentives to the future you hope to build. The image of Kodak, once synonymous with a single human habit, reminds us that being first to invent does not guarantee being first to thrive. That is Kodak's final quiet lesson. I hope this deep dive gave you a new perspective on the strategies and the relentless mindset behind these global icons. If you enjoy deconstructing business empires and tech legends in this tech archive style, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. That way, you will never miss a new blueprint of history. For those of you ready to explore more boardroom coups and technological breakthroughs, I have handpicked 2 videos for you right here on the screen. Click one to keep watching. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.